when it comes to launching on Pulsechain specifically as a founder or as a builder, I think Fame or Famous has done that. Buck has done that. Others that were on earlier have done that. The culture of a product or a service is set by the CEO. Whether it's the founder that becomes the CEO, hires someone else later that defines the culture better. And I'm curious about your opinions, both of you, your opinions about the ability of builders to build new things or fork existing things with this idea of, collaborating with Ethereum builders, collaborating with Solidity developers. Is this, in your opinion, direct competition, or is this, in your opinion, a builder's environment on Pulsechain?
So I think phase one is really trying to catch up and show those guys, Gary, that Pulsechain's a good place to build and make money. So far, there's actually not a lot of activity so far from these sort of third parties, which has actually surprised me, because I think it's a fantastic place to build, and there's lots of people that are open-minded and they're risk-taking by nature. So I think phase two will actually be involve more of that once we've sort of proven to people that Pulsechain's a going concern, particularly those things that are more complex, that are capital intensive. Those guys aren't going to step up until they think there's that this thing's going to stick around and be worth their effort and their energy. They can kind of do it elsewhere for now, but I do think they'll come in ultimately and compete like hell against people like me, and I really welcome it, because by then I think I will have already won. So it's like a common question I get is like, well, what if Aave comes to Pulsechain? It's like, oh, please let Aave come to Pulsechain. You know what I mean? It's like, that's such good news for all of us. So yeah, I think that's the kind of the first thing is we need to have a few home runs, early. And I think that's actually not going to come from Pulsex or Pulse. It's going to come from, things like, what is being built by people like me, or even meme coins. Like that's the reality. That's what's going to get people excited. Like someone somewhere is telling somebody about this balancer fork that's up like 100x that you all could have bought, 2 weeks ago for practically nothing, right? So that kind of stuff is what's ultimately going to get people interested. I'm suddenly getting 1 million Telegram messages per day now because of that, right? So Pulsechain is going to be a great place to build things. And then the kind of key infrastructure as well that people like Liquid Loans are putting up will also enable a lot of other people to go, well, actually, the stuff's already there, so we can build on it. So yeah, no, I think that's probably the biggest thing that people have a hard time imagining right now. I've noticed that a lot of people don't have much of an imagination. They can only see things that are immediately in front of them. That's why they're like looking at a chart and finding patterns. It's not something that's not something I like to do, and I'm pretty good at using intuition to sort of look at what's likely to come in the future. And what I do believe is that we're going to have a bunch of early successes from a few projects. You're going to have successes from meme coins. You're going to have different things built. People are going to see, oh, actually, there's a lot of money here. Let's go experiment with that. And 6 months from now, Pulsechain is going to look dramatically different. And then you're going to start to see Pulse price start to outperform Ethereum, and you're going to see Hex price outperforming, and people are going to be going, oh, hey, actually, is this thing worth looking at? And then that's going to drive in a whole new wave of speculation. So like I really think that's the future that's coming to us. I think it takes 6 to 12 months, but what's great about Pulsechain, in my opinion, right now is just how nobody's taking it seriously. Like when you said what you just said about BitBoy, Moon King is like, like music to my ears. You know what I mean? Nobody's talking about it right now. But I already see the future where they will be, and it's just going to take a few, early wins and for that, for us to bottom out and start to go up before you will start to see these guys going, hey, did you guys see this Pulsechain thing? It's done, it's up 100% over the past month. Like that's going to happen sometime in the next year. I'm fairly confident we're going to have a month like that, and that's going to kick off a whole wave of things. And I'm willing to bet we'll start to hear aggressively from Richard around that time.
I agree. I mean, to the T. You said 6 to 12 months. I think it was like I start my 6 months from the day of launch. So I always say like October, November-ish area, you'll probably start hearing him talk more, or even, doing more. Or I think a lot of people are going to start the developments of the projects that we're all waiting to come out, should be or probably will be out by then. And I think that's where you're going to see the heads start turning. And I think one thing different, though, is that does need to be talked about and said is, the community side of it. It could be a meme coin. It could be a meme coin. And it could be just the most simplest dApp. We don't know what it's going to be, but I think we should allow it to just open up and just allow that to happen. And that's kind of why I do like why Richard Hart went the way he went. And, it was, I visioned it seeing that, say, hey, you got to open up the meme coins too. And, he did. So I was just like, I said that weeks before where I said he needs to open up to meme coins because it's the best thing that has since sliced bread for layer ones. And I do think that when he opened up to that, the big thing that needs to be accepted is the community needs to accept that and realize that a layer one doesn't care about just utility. A layer one cares about whatever comes on it to make it more popular. That's simple. That's all the layer one cares about. It's a decentralized layer one, which means you don't get to have the say. And I like the fact that, Richard Hart went that way and he did his thing. So I 100% appreciate that, because you'll realize that in the decentralized world, you will get left behind. So just join the bandwagon.
And that's one of the reasons that I have, kind of pivoted from the hex maximalist to accepting the idea of a sacrifice 2 years ago, or accepting the idea that a DEX with a design intention would be what was delivered versus, no expectation from the profit, profit from the work of others. These narratives that are third rail narratives. And I would like, if you're going to be so bold, both of you to be so bold, to comment about any builder, doesn't matter whether it's Richard or any builder, making a design intention statement and then delivering something that's not design intention, especially after a fundraised. So are you, either of you, willing to touch the topic of design intention in marketing versus delivered, and this Machiavellian grand wizard know everything that's going to happen, play out kind of founder? Can you guys make comment about that?
When it comes to expectation of, I'm going to say expectation of profit, I personally am willing to take anything that it takes to get where we need to get to. And I think that any builder should do that. Now, the more experienced you are as a builder, you are more likely to pivot. You see many companies pivot that are successful and go a different direction. Traditional market, like I can name different pivots that, BlackBerry used to be the way to go, and Apple decided to pivot and go a different direction for smartphones. Yeah, like I think when you're like, this is how we should be and this is how we should do this, I think it's the dumbest thing, because what that tells you is you don't know change and you don't know how to adjust. If something's not working, you have to pivot and go the other way. It's that simple. And that's just business. And that's crypto, because crypto is changing every freaking quarter. Something new is coming out. Something's different. Every cycle is something new. I was anti NFTs. Well, that sucked for me. Glad I had meme coins and glad I had SHIB, because if I didn't find that, I should have been in NFTs. And, you got to pivot. You got to change your worldview. So if you don't know how to do that as a founder, it's going to be a rough time for you. I'll just put that.
So my pushback on that is, if there's a pushback. So I'm not a hex maximalist. I'm not a Richard Hart maximalist. I'm still an expectation of design intention maximalist. If Buck had done a fundraise and said, I'm going to do a GMX kind of fork, and then the design was 180% different, or 180 degree different than the design intention pitched, I would still be pissed, because that's not the religion I bought into. So my statement is not trying to be toxic. It is trying to say, what do you expect of the builders that are going to come onto Pulsechain if they are above and beyond a meme? If they actually say, this is what we intend to do, whether it's fundraised or whether it's out there, such as it's immutable, it can't be changed, and then you find a bug, of course, you're going to be like, hey, the bug should have been sorted out because the audits were paid for. What is the option? So again, I'm taking a leap of faith for 4 years in Richard Hart maximalism, or his ego being so large that he delivers more than his own gains. So like that's the message I think most of the community tries to support in general is, does this product represent the design intention that the community has gravitated toward? Does it? And when Abet was saying earlier about, the PLS versus the Hex T-share, play the ratio trade game, that's all fine because probably 90% of the crypto market is simply gamblers anyway. If you're going to bet on anything, it may not be that, like Moon King points out constantly, utility is very late in the list of what makes a coin go up. What matters is the community. And if the community is in disarray and the community says, this network versus that network product, this is the reason why the product will flail, that's why you see the price reflected on both or all things. You saw capitulation in PLSX, and that didn't buy Hex. It didn't make the price of Hex go up because PLSX was capitulating. It didn't make the price of PLS necessarily go to the moon. So maybe that's because of volume multipliers and all those other things where people were still in profit. But like if we are actually going to multiply value economically, in my opinion, it all depends on, are you comfortable talking to 10 more people than you did yesterday? Are you, as an individual that has financial energy in the system or brand in the system, are you doing outreach personally? Or are you basically defaulting to YouTubers and hoping that they're going to pump your bags instead? So that's really the question.
The part with like Richard Hart and what he put out. I personally, when I invested into Hex and into the ecosystem, it was more on Richard Hart. It actually wasn't even the community. It's just on Richard Hart alone, just because I know the type of person he is, and I believe he's going to do what it takes for him to win. So because it's what's going to take for him to win, I think it's going to bring everyone else with him if he believes it. If you believe that in him, the community aspect of it, I think we have to be adults enough to have our own decisions in how we feel about things and accept that. But me personally, the only reason I'm actually invested in this is because I know that Richard Hart is going to do what it takes to win. So I see that in him, and whatever he chooses, that is part of my investment style. Now, if I chose to go in because I believe that we shouldn't trade and this is what we're going to do, I wouldn't have invested. Like, if that was my mindset, I understand why people are upset. I get it. But what it was, I believe, is your mindset, not yours in general, Gary, but people's mindset in general was kind of mistaken on this is how things work. And that's how things worked for Hex. And that is the difference. It's not going to work that way for Pulsechain. So you are 1,000% right on the last part that you said. You're going to have to go out and talk to 10 people and converse with other people outside of your echo chamber, because the average echo chamber in Pulsechain or in crypto is not 5, stake for 15 years and hold forever. That's just not the reality of crypto. So you actually kind of have to, and Richard Hart talked about this at one point in time, you actually have to scoop down to their level, do what they do. No, not necessarily do what they do, or maybe you have to trick them into it, or maybe you got to do whatever you got to do. But that's what I believe is what Richard Hart's doing. He's going down to the level that's going to allow him to make people right and win. And if he can get another 300,000 people, 400,000 people, and then convert a section of them to the way he thinks, everybody wins. But for some reason, everyone forgot how Hex improved and how Hex went up in value. It was a bunch of degens, like I said earlier, that believed in him, that he, quote unquote, saved them. And now they have a mentality, but they forgot how it was in the beginning of Hex, how they kind of stumbled upon Hex. It's probably because they got wrecked from 2016 to 2017. So allow him to do with people in crypto that he did for you back in 2018 and 19 with Hex. Just allow the process and allow the man to do his thing, And that's why I am betting on him and how he does things, and not the idea of you have to hold, or pissed out at other people for holding, or him pissed out for tweeting out Pepe. You're just not, you're being short-sighted, and you're being tunnel vision and not seeing the big picture, in my opinion.
My view on what you said is we're seeing Old Testament Richard right now. This isn't New Testament Richard. This is Old Testament Richard, and we've seen Old Testament Richard before in kind of like that first couple months of hacks, right? It's just Old Testament Richard has to last longer this time around because it's just going to take longer. So my advice to guys that are worried about it is to go read the book of Job and try and get the moral from that one because I think that's what we're experiencing a little bit at the moment. But the good stuff, the ascension to heaven and all that stuff, that comes later. Spoiler alert.
Going into the billions of dollar market cap. And that's when retail comes in at the height of the bull market. They're going to start hearing about it. The news will start talking about it. It'll influx of retail coming in. Well, people are going to try to buy Pepe, but they're going to realize, unless they do it on a centralized exchange, which hopefully it's been preached enough to stay off those, they're going to see the gas fees of being 500 plus just to ape in 50, 100, and viewers, we talked about this on the stream the other day. If they want to ape in, $500, $1,000, it's going to cost them another $500, $1,000 just to ape in. And then when we do have a coin, and I believe Pepe will probably be the first one to get close to parity, you're going to see a lot of people, a lot of retail saying, hey, that's our second chance to get in, to get gains, to be, a prominent holder in the coin. And they'll be able to ape in, whether it's a couple $100 on pennies on the dollar with gas fees. And that's what we were talking about, viewers. I think that's important to think that retail is going to be a little bit more drawn to something like Pulsechain, where they can get a second chance on getting those Pepe gains and not having to spend, $500,000 plus in gas fees. And I think that's what's so smart and built into the Pulsechain ecosystem and the Pulsechain. People getting free copies, basically getting free money, people coming over and dumping. Some people are going to figure it out later in the bull cycle, and they're going to realize they have free money, and they're going to come over and they're going to see Pulsechain running, and they're going to say, hey, why would I sell out of Pulsechain when I can hold Pulsechain, I can hold Pepe, and continue to grow that bag and make some serious, gains, and not risking it on Ethereum, paying $1,000 a pop just to play, just to be able to invest anything. So that's what I think is so smart about Pulsechain. And we were talking about the built-in marketing of that, and I just feel like Richard Hart is just starting to kind of touch on that just a little bit, getting the haters and the disbelievers to kind of dump and get out of the ecosystem. But then even those people will probably come back later. So that's what I love about the built-in marketing on the Pulsechain.
The question, do those customers deserve those coins? When the Gnosis safe RPCs for Pulsechain get adopted, when do the devs come and dump? Probably, right? Like you would, if that's what the hype boys of the insiders did, you would expect that the exchange seeding coins would just get dumped immediately on the market. But those are interesting things to wait around and see, because at the same time, it might beg the question, well, then are we on Binance all of a sudden? Or are we having a outrage with all of our voices combined about like financial adversarial attack on our network without giving custody to the customers? So it puts people in like these weird positions, in my opinion. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I would say two things about that. One is, by the time that happens, you guys can make a ton of money, right? And maybe you already have. And you can potentially front run those guys. They will come eventually and sell, especially if you give them a good reason to. But in a way, even if they do, like your exit and you get used as exit liquidity, that might actually be helping the broader Pulsechain community, right? Because that could be a fucking story that everybody reads about. Hey, these idiots on fucking Pulsechain pumped up, the Pulse version of Pepe, and it's a win for Pulsechain.
I just want to say thanks to you guys for creating this conversation, because I think a lot of people in this space are under the misapprehension that if you discuss nuance, if you discuss a difference in opinion, then you have to start attacking each other personally or something. Like, no, it's okay to have a difference in opinion. It's not the end of the world. In fact, it's actually a great thing to go through a difference of an opinion and discuss the nuance and look at both sides of the argument. I think that's actually something that should be applauded, not avoided. So shout out to you guys for for doing this. Number one, and number two, shout out to Flooding Jim Gary for having not just the integrity but the balls to ask a question. I think a lot of people in this community are trying their hardest to avoid that question, essentially being, to what extent do founders, to what extent are they obliged to deliver on the design intentions they've publicly set out? There's many considerations in that regard, and I think a lot of people are avoiding that question. And just to give a bit of context as to where I think that's coming from Gary and what I've been up to lately, and I want to ask what you guys think about my view on this. I've been very publicly pointing out on Twitter and my YouTube channel that I think removing single-side staking from Pulsex is a massive detriment to the potential price performance of Pulsex. I believe that Richard Hart 100% set the design expectations. He did not set the expectations of profit from the work of others, but he set the design expectation of single-side staking through his tweets, through the single-side staking on testnet, through the tab that's live right now on mainnet for the pools for single-side staking. And I mean, guys, I remember, 2 years ago, before this whole Pulsechain thing, all Richard Hart did for 2 years straight was talk about the importance of game theory, tokenomics, and the importance of having a bullish narrative around your token for price performance. And I believe that taking away single-side staking from Pulsex removes a massive narrative to buy Pulsex, to hold Pulsex, and gives people a great excuse to sell it. And it's not just, my theory. We saw after Richard's tweets that there was a whale selling a bunch of Pulsex. So just that's kind of the first thing I wanted to comment on, since Gary brought that up. And I do have something else as well. But just to start off here, what do you guys think about my whole rambling there?
Yeah, I'm gonna go just in my personal, feelings and how I feel, about Pulsex and how that, went down. I personally am a holder of, Pulsex, and that is not a detrimental issue to what he created. Now, is it a negative thing? Yes, it is definitely something that I think should be there if that's what part of the tokenomics, or that's what you think that was bullish of locking up, and having a TVL there. But that doesn't really hurt me unless I would say, if he said no more buy and burn, I would be like, yo, you just killed the tokenomics of Pulsex. It's done for. You would probably see a massive dump. But I don't think single side staking is really changing that for me, and as far as my mindset is how I feel that. So that's me personally. I do think other people are kind of upset with it, when in reality, I'm not. I'm just gonna say I don't think it kills everything. Hold Pulsex based off of single side staking or not. If he didn't say that there was going to be single side staking, there would be the exact same amount that would sacrifice for Pulsex. And if he said it didn't, I don't think that makes or break it. And if you have to put yourself in that situation, would you, Brandon, still invest the amount that you invest if you never heard about single side staking on Pulsex?
No, I wouldn't have, because again, it's a massive narrative. It gives people a reason to buy, gives people a reason to hold, and just also to clarify, it's not my position that I think Pulsex is going to go to zero, or it's just I think it is likely that if you remove a massive bullish narrative, that it will perform probably not as good as if it had that massive bullish narrative. I'm still a bull. I still have been buying. I still believe in this. I just, I think that removing a giant narrative objectively hurts it.
It can. I mean, we're only telling the difference. I personally don't think it kills the narrative. I'll give it another example. It's a prime example, actually, that we all can attest to. Pulsechain. We all thought that we didn't have to, be a tech nerd to be able to stake for Pulsechain. And then when that was taken away, that was like, ugh, man, you killed it. Like I actually felt that. I was like, yo, you just killed it. And I was just like, whatever it is, what it is, I still don't think that kills it. I think it would help it a little bit more, but I don't think it kills its gains by taking it away. And that's kind of how I feel about same thing with Pulsex. If that announcement came out like we were expecting it, and then it came, the coin came out, and then we were told that like there won't be any staking, I think that would have been a bigger dump for sure. So I do think that you just got like Pulsex just got the hit because it happened during while the coin was out. So timing of the announcement hurts. Does it really hurt the actual overall ecosystem, as you said, because you're still a bull? It doesn't. Do we keep bringing noise about something that's not going to happen? I don't think so. It only hurts the whole, the whole scenario. But you have a right to make noise and have your voice be heard, and you have a right to an opinion, and I respect that opinion.
I agree with you, Moon King. I don't think the single sided staking thing matters at all. For like the price of PulseX, like I think people are flipping out about it, but I don't think it matters at all. PulseX is going to be worth whatever it's worth, and that's basically what it's worth. Is it's the dominant DEX on Pulsechain. So and that's likely to continue to be the case forever, in my opinion. So like I don't worry about. That decision made absolutely no difference to me whatsoever in how I would value Pulsechain. I think it's a gimmick. The single sided staking thing is a bit of a gimmick. I don't think it matters. PulseX will go up with Pulse, right? And the reason you're down right now in PulseX isn't because of features or whatever. The reason you're down is because you guys overpaid for it. You gave $1 billion for a DEX, right? $1 billion fucking dollars for a DEX at the top of the market, pretty much, right? A DEX, the biggest DEX in the world is what? Uniswap. It's worth a couple billion. It's on many chains, and it's dominant on most of those chains, right? And its tokens only worth what $3 billion. You guys overpaid for it. Okay, so that's why it's down, right? That's the bottom line. Market's dropped a ton since you sacrificed. So fucking grow up. That's why you're down. You're down for that reason. Your timing sucked. And PulseX is fine. And Richard's done a great job with it, as far as I'm concerned. The other thing I'll say is there is a 2.5x multiplier for a lot of people. They're in profit. They're incentivized to basically wreck you. They're not down, right? But they have the incentive because they got that bonus to basically sell for a profit or even a small loss. A small loss is good in a period where markets are down dramatically, which is what we're in currently. So that's why you're down, those two factors. And you signed up for both of them, right? So, really that's on you if you guys are upset about it, I think, right? Now, the good news is I don't think it's going to matter to the PulseX price in the long run. It's going to do as well as Pulsechain does. And, but in that regard, you guys should feel pretty comfortable. If you're comfortable with Pulse, you should be comfortable with PulseX at this stage. Because now we're finally finding out what it's worth. And, the ratio to me starts to look more normal, right? Uniswap is worth, what, 100th of Ethereum? PulseX is worth, what, 40% of Pulse? Something like that. Like, it's outperforming as far as I'm concerned. It's doing really well. I wouldn't be too upset about it. The single-sided staking thing is nonsense. The main thing that matters is that volume that's going to generate fees, and you're going to get that forever because you have the most liquid pairs. It's the biggest brand name. Like no one else can compete with that properly, right? So to me, it feels like a pretty safe investment to the extent that Pulsechain is successful. So in terms of design intention, like this stuff's hard, man. Not everybody can do it exactly the way they want to do it. I'm really glad Richard decided not to launch the V2B version of Pulsechain. I think we're way better off actually with the slower, quote unquote, shittier version because we're more like Ethereum now. And I think that's actually what we want to do is just suck the life out of Ethereum. And we'd be signing ourselves up to a whole host of fucking weird, programming issues that we can't even anticipate if we did things differently. You saw this with Aave on Matic. I think they neglected to change one little part of their code and it fucked up. Right? You'd be seeing that happen again and again in a million different ways. So I think it's really fortunate actually that it turned out that way with the validators and things like that. I know it's not what you guys wanted, but I do believe Richard's doing the best he can for the community. I don't really have a lot of sympathy for people that are upset about their PulseX bag dropping. and also like I was here 2 years ago warning you guys that you were overpaying for it, and you guys hated me for pointing that out then, and I'm just reminding you again that you overpaid for it, and now some of you are gonna probably sell it for too cheap here too, right? So that's the lesson, I think.
My position, just to clarify, is I think the growth potential for Pulsex is limited without single side staking. But like I said, I'm sellable. I've been very happily and accurately and publicly buying the lows. So I'm very happy about this. I think things are going to do well in term. I just think that the fact that now the new narrative is that hey, Pulsex will do good just because of the bonding, liquidity bonding, Hart's law, is not like the strongest bullish case to be had. I mean, I think this whole question was much more clear when Richard put it in context of a Uniswap and the Uni token. I mean, he very publicly and famously criticized the Uni token for being like a duct tape on token with no use case. I mean, I frankly think Pulsex is in a similar position without single side staking. There was supposed to be governance. There's no governance. There's some great tokenomics, but there's a difference between tokenomics and use case. I mean, Hex's tokenomics is decentralized yield without third party risk, but its tokenomics is the T-share system. Pulsechain is a gas token with deflationary tokenomics. Pulsex has fantastic tokenomics with the buy and burn, which is why I'm holder and a buyer. But without single set staking, the use case is gone, and that's objectively a bullish narrative. And removing a bullish narrative to pretend that doesn't hurt the potential price impact. I mean, this is just a new narrative that I'm finding out for the very first time, because all I heard for the first 2 years of Hex's existence was that these little nuances with tokenomics and game theory matter. And now it seems to me like everyone's conveniently forgetting these things. Now that it applies to our bags and our positions, it seems like all these lessons that were taught for the first 2 years of Hex's existence, people are conveniently throwing out the window. It's just my impression. I'm not accusing you guys of doing that.
I think PulseX will do well just being by getting a lot of volume. If hey, like the Pepe boys are your friends.